And reminder, Q&A at 2:00, and it does have a different Zoom link, and I will drop that in the chat too if you haven't already received it. And please type your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A for answering at the 2 p.m. session, or if we finish early, we will start answering questions. New questions can also be asked at the 2 p.m. session. And then all session recordings will be emailed out, including the Q&A. And we'll also send out a survey after the last session. So please check with your monitoring authority regarding their requirements. And CTC does have purview over granting and denying all applications submitted for review. So that's just kind of some disclaimers there. And so I'm going to let Stephanie and Candy screen share and go ahead and start with their presentation. Thank you, Candy and Stephanie, if you guys can introduce yourselves.
I'm Stephanie Tomasi, the Credentials Manager at the Alameda County Office of Education.
I just realized my mute was on, so people probably didn't hear my introduction. I'm Candy Hayes. I'm the Supervisor of Credential Services for Contra Costa County Office of Education.
All right, so this session that we have is on emergency permits, PIPs, STIPs, waivers, GLAPs, CLAPs, and appeals. What I want to clarify is that we tend to categorize these types of documents under emergency permits, but we recognize they all have their own title, and they all have their unique set of requirements. So we want to just clarify that if you're looking for information on emergency permits, such as emergency CLADs or emergency BCLADs, this is not the session. You would refer to the CTC leaflets on those types of permits. But we're going to be discussing and going over options to cover classrooms in the severe teacher shortage that we are having. So I'm having an issue here. Let me, I want to see people and I want to see the screen at the same time. So bear with me a minute. Current slide. Candy, how do I do that? I want to see which, is it the speaker view or what is it? No, that isn't doing it. Okay, well, that's all right.
Are you trying to share, Stephanie?
Can you see the screen?
No, we cannot yet.
Okay, hang on. Sorry, bear with me.
No worries.
Screen share. Okay, I think we're
there. You
there.
go. And then if you just put in a presentation view, you're good to go.
All right, thank you. All right, so this is on how to cover classrooms in the teacher shortage. So this is not emergency CLADs, emergency BCLADs. So that is what we wanted to make sure you understood. And we are mindful that we have a large audience today, and you're all at various stages in your credentialing journey. So we want to provide information that's going to be beneficial to everyone. So it may seem basic to the people who have a more seasoned credential knowledge, but just know that we're trying to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about and that no one's left in the dark on what's happening here. So we know that before considering hiring, you want to make sure you exhaust all efforts to hire a fully certified teacher. It's actually written in Ed Code, and there's a coded correspondence 1301 on that point. So I won't open the link, but it's there to say that districts need to do their due diligence to recruit and find a fully certified teacher before going to a provisional internship permit or a short-term staff permit. Commission used to issue emergency long-term permits, and they were renewable, and they would go on and on and on. And the commission said, no, stop, we're not doing that anymore. Those permits are dragging on and people are not progressing in their credential journey to get their credential. So the commission put the brakes on emergency long-term permits, and now we have the STIPs and the PIPs. So you have applicants now who they've indicated to the district that they have an interest in teaching and they have an interest in enrolling in a teaching program, but you need to know if they qualify for one of these short-term staff permits or provisional internship permits. So there are some certain steps you want to take. And this may seem basic, but we just want to remind everyone, you want to have the conversation with the applicant and not just rely on a resume. You need to actually do some detective work to find out, have they had a credential before, either in California or another state, or maybe even another country? Do they have a bachelor's degree or even a BA equivalency? They come from another country, they'll be bringing you a foreign transcript evaluation that has to say they have a degree equivalent to a bachelor's degree earned in the United States. It has to specifically state that on the foreign transcript evaluation. And also you want to review that person from another country. If you see a teaching program on that foreign evaluation, including student teaching, they may not need a STIP or PIP. You may be able to apply for a preliminary teaching credential for them. So just be mindful of that. Have they been issued a PIP or STIP before? Do they have anything else that's valid in the commission's website? So have they passed CBEST or any other types of basic equivalency? Do they have any of that? So doing detective work, we advise you to always use the secured web search on the commission's website. You would need the full social and date of birth for the applicant to make sure you're in that person's record. You don't want to be in someone else's record. If you do a public search, you may not be in the right record. So also, when you do a secured search for your applicants, you're going to have ability to see an applications tab. That's very important. Sometimes you go in and you'll see nothing. If you don't find a record for the person, you'll know they're brand new. They haven't even started anything with the application process. But if you should go on the secured search and you see their name pop up, and you see fingerprint status, and you see nothing listed for credential or permit, don't stop there. Okay, this is a little tip I'm going to give you. I've been doing credentials for over 26 years, and I want to give you this tip because it has been something that I have found. If you take the extra step and go into the applications tab, you may see some things there that you need to know about. Okay, if they ever try to apply for something previously, whether it was recently or years ago, it will be shown there. Either it'll say application, deleted, purged, fee used, but if you ever see DPP reject in that applications tab, that's a signal that you need to just put the brakes on that applicant, because that means that the Division of Professional Practices did not clear the professional fitness background. Okay, and so it's important that when you're working with people that they be able to clear their professional fitness background review. So you would advise that individual who has that to obtain their certificate of clearance. It may mean they need to be re-fingerprinted. And you would know if fingerprint status says complete, then the state has the information. If it says incomplete, it means they need to do new fingerprints on CTC's fingerprint form 41LS. Okay, now the C on complete doesn't mean that they're all clear. Just know that. It could mean the commission sitting on a rap sheet, right? So C for the commission just means they have the information, whether it's a no criminal record report or it's a rap sheet. So I just wanted to give you that tip because I have seen a few in the last few years where I've noticed it and the district did not notice it. And then I had to go to the district and say, I can't process this application because your person never passed their professional fitness review. And so that kind of stopped things for that applicant there for a time. It doesn't mean they'll never get certified. It just means they have to do that, follow up with that background check, and the certificate of clearance will get them through that. So these are the basic things that we look for, and just be a detective and look up, see if you can find any credential history. Now, if you see they've been issued a sub permit before, then you know that CTC has their degree on file, they have basic skills on file, but be careful because with COVID flexibilities and even under 1397, sub permits are being issued without basic skills. So you want to always open the document, look at the renewal requirements and see if you see any indications that the document was issued without basic skills. Because for a STIP and a PIP, they need basic skills. That's something that you have to look for. So anyway, those are just a few tips that might help you determine some of these things that we need to consider initially. All right, so now there is a difference in the provisional intern and the short-term staff permit. The main difference, everybody wants to know, well, what do I do? What do I apply for? Where do I start? Just know that the provisional internship permit is valid for 1 calendar year, unlike the short-term staff permit that's only valid for the current school year. All right, it is a restricted document, just like the STIP is. It's restricted to the employing agency. It's for immediate or anticipated staffing needs. If they've met their CSETs or they have subject matter equivalency by degree, the PIP is not an option. That's off the board. Okay, so then you would stop and you'd move on to the STIP. Person can hold a PIP once, no renewals, no extensions. There is an exception to that rule, and it's very rare. Individuals that were issued PIPs prior to October 1st, 2013 can get a renewal if they have not met subject matter competency. I mean, I've never seen any, but you might have somebody who had that permit, left, came back, still, you know, so that may be something that you see, but it's going to be very rare. So the PIPs are not renewable, and they're available in the areas of single subject, multiple subjects, and education specialist. And they all have the English learner authorization on them. So yeah, they're all issued with EL. So you don't have to do a separate emergency CLAD permit because EL is going to be included in the PIPs and STIPs, because we know that when they do their teaching program, the English learner is embedded in the teaching program. So it's all part of the PIP and STIP. So moving on, the overall requirements for a PIP are, again, the bachelor's degree or higher by a CTC regionally accredited university. And remember that, you know, foreign transcripts need evaluations. If you get any Canadian transcripts, they need a foreign evaluation. And for single subjects, you're looking for 18 semester units in the specific single subject area that you need them covered for. If you're going to request an English PIP, they need to have at least 18 units that fall under English in order to get the PIP for that subject. Now, their degree in English, you move on to STIP. For multiple subjects, they have to have 40 areas that in 4 different areas. So you're looking for 10 semester units in 4 separate areas. We'll be looking at the worksheets in a little bit, but this is the main thing, is 10 in 4 areas or in 3 areas and a combination of 2 for multiple subjects. Basic skills is a requirement for both. This is just listing a few. There's a lot more ways to meet basic skills now, and you'll use leaflet 667 to determine how they are meeting their basic skills. And then coursework has to be met with a grade of C or better. Credit is fine, credit and pass. Liberal studies is considered subject matter competency now. So if you have somebody with a liberal studies degree, you move on to the STIP. PIP is not an option anymore for people with a liberal studies degree in multiple subjects. But if you're requesting a single subject and they have a liberal studies degree, you can do that. But if they have a degree in what you're requesting, you have to move on to the STIP. All right, so degree major in the subject, go to STIP. We just keep repeating that just so that you understand this is a fairly new thing that's come about. And then I'll be showing you some tools on how to determine if your degree is subject matter equivalency or not. 18 units, there's the worksheets. Now for the sciences, at least 9 upper division units or 18 in the area that you're requesting for science. Now, you can't just say, I just want a science. You have to say what kind of science you want: bio, geo, chemistry, physics. You have to state what you're looking for that document and then look for the units. Now, foundational level science, they can have a BA in any of the sciences, just not health science, okay? Health science is not considered science per se. It's its own subject, its own statutory subjects, and health science teaches things like nutrition and exercise and first aid. It's a different type of sciences. So not degree in health science does not work for this. So they need, for foundational level science, 4 18 semester units in 4 areas. All of the areas with 1 course in each area must be met. And this is stated on the science leaf worksheet that we're going to be going over. So just again, recapping the requirements for subject matter competency for a PIP. This is what it is. And the statutory subjects for PIPs and STIPs are here. These are the current statutory subjects. Everything that's listed here, you have to state one of these on your requested form for a PIP or a STIP. Again, you can't just say science, it has to say what kind of science or foundational science. Now, the one error that I see a few times is mostly the new analysts might forget. If they have a history class and they put history, well, California doesn't issue a history credential. But history falls under social science, so they can teach history, but you have to request the application as a social science application. Okay, so only request subjects that are on this list of statutory subjects. World languages other than English. So if you're requesting Spanish, French, German, ASL is one of those. American Sign Language would be a world language other than English. Those are few and far between because it's really hard to find 18 units that are in the sign language types of classes, but it does happen. Most of the time people need waivers because they may barely have 12 units and then they need to take the ASL CSET. So just wanted you to know that these are the statutory subjects that you can request on a PIP or a STIP. Okay, so I wanted to show you, rather than repeat what I've been saying, BA or higher units, I want to actually show you this cool link. This is from the CTC website. I'm just going to pop it open. This is going to help you look at a transcript and you see a degree and you want to know, can I move forward with the PIP or do I have to go to a STIP? So let's open it and then I'll just kind of go over it together. All right, so this is the at a glance demonstrating subject matter competency. So it must be an exact match. So the degree on the transcripts has to exactly match. Otherwise, it's not considered subject matter equivalency. So
Stephanie,
if it's,
we're not seeing your screen share.
uh-oh. Thank you. I'll get it up.
Yeah, no worries. You're doing great.
Are we there now?
Yes, you are.
All right. So this is the at a glance chart that must be an exact match. So if it's in an academic major that's not an exact match, the PIP is okay to move forward on if they have the qualifying subject matter units. So now you're looking at transcripts and you see you're doing a multiple subjects. You want to request a multiple subjects PIP. If the degree says liberal studies or any of these other things, they're not going to qualify for a PIP because these are now subject matter competency degrees. So these folks won't even need to take the CSET for these subjects because their degrees are considered subject matter competency. For single subjects, the degree has to be an exact match to one of these subjects, okay? If it doesn't say specifically, one of these things, then the PIP's fine, you can go with the PIP. But even theater now, theater used to fall under English, it doesn't anymore. It has its own area. So if somebody has a theater degree, you cannot request a theater PIP, to teach like drama. That does not work anymore because it's no longer falls under English. I mean, people with a prior issued English credential can still teach drama, but moving forward with requesting PIPs and STIPs, it is its own category. Also acceptable are applied majors like applied mathematics, applied physics, and so on, even like physical education, kinesiology, those are also accepted. So if you see that on a transcript as a degree, it is accepted and you move on to the STIP option. So when you're doing education specialist, your special ed PIPs and STIPs, if they have any, they qualify for multiple or single subjects. they're going to qualify for an education specialist, and you would move on to the STIP. So it can be a bachelor's, a master's, or doctoral degree. Those are all acceptable for considering subject matter equivalency by degree. They have to be earned by an institution that's accredited, and then the state does, you know, you don't need to do a coursework evaluation. They have a degree and you're going to do the STIP. They've met, you know, you don't have to have the worksheet. There's no GPA requirement, no limitation on when the degree was earned, as long as they earned it from an accredited college, and these are the regionally accredited bodies here. Now, I have found some cases where I'm not familiar with the college at all, so do some research, Google the university and check accreditation to find out what accrediting body they fall under, and find it out that way, because then none of us have a crystal ball on this stuff. We have to research and find out if they have one of these. You know, they might be accredited by a body that's not, commission doesn't accept. I've seen some try to come through as a, you know, chiropractic college, or even a Bible college, or technical and trade kind of colleges. They have their own different types of accreditation that the commission does not recognize for teaching purposes, for getting a credential. So just be mindful that you have to do a little detective work sometimes to figure it out. But this is a really great tool that I find really helpful. So let me see if I can go out of that and back into this. All right, so you can now see we're back on our slides. Candy, am I back on my slides? Okay. So we've shared the at a glance chart, great tool, and we're going to keep going. For special ed, again, they have to qualify for multiple or single subjects are going to qualify for special ed. Or there's another option for special education. They can qualify with 3 years of classroom experience in working with special ed students. Experience as an aide is acceptable. So you would include in your packet an original letter on district letterhead stating that the applicant has the 3 or more years of special ed classroom experience. So all of that would be on a letterhead, and that's acceptable for qualifying for a special education PIP or STIP. And then there's another option. Have a combination of special ed and general ed units. Can be a combination, or all, you know, general ed, all special ed. Well, they have to be combination special ed or combination of. So 9 units and they're all special ed, or combination of general ed and special ed. That's an option there. And there's not a PIP available for ECSE. And why is that? It's because subject matter competency is not a requirement to enroll in a ECSE program. So they don't offer the PIP for that. As a standalone, you can do a request an ECSE with something else, with one of the other new types of special ed disability areas, but not as a standalone. So these are the new authorizations. So when we're requesting STIPs and PIPs now, it's no more mild, moderate, moderate, severe. Those are the old program. Now all the programs have expanded their authorizations. So you're going to say, you know, I need MMSN, mild, moderate support needs, ESN, extensive support needs, which used to be moderate, severe. The other names are the same. And then this is a handy, I want to show you, in case you're not aware, of what the new special education chart looks like. And I'll have to stop sharing that and screen share this. I'll get the hang of this. All right, so now you see, Candy, is that my special ed chart? Okay. So these are the new special education disability areas here at the top. And you can see a lot of green check marks here that didn't used to be there. So you have a comparison of the new special ed authorization on the top to the old authorizations at the bottom. So what used to be mild, moderate, you can see there's a lot more red check boxes there. They've expanded the authorizations, which is a really good thing. You're going to see less exceptions in the long run. More teachers are going to have, you know, they're going to be able to cover more disability areas. And that's just a really good thing because the programs have expanded in that way. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of the new and the old, be able to compare the two. Go back to my presentation. All right, so this is back in the presentation of the disability areas that we can now ask for. Employer requirements for a provisional internship permit. There is an employer verification form, CL 857, we'll be talking about in a bit. It verifies that the district did a diligent search and has made all efforts to find a fully credentialed person, but could not. The approval for the PIP has to have a copy of the board agenda approving the assignment. It's very important that that copy, if you're a school district, you need to, have this. It has to say the applicant's name, assignment and subject, grade level. All of this has to be, and that they're being hired on the basis of a PIP. All of that has to be stated in the agenda. It cannot be on a consent calendar or a closed session. It has to be part of a public meeting. If you're a COE, you can do the 72-hour public posting, copy of that. But all other agencies need to provide a copy of that board agenda. So now you're going to put together your packet for a paper PIP. Do check with your local county office of ed or your monitoring authority. They may have options for online submission. Our county does online submissions, but it is dependent upon the county. I mean, very large counties don't have the manpower to do all of the online applications, but a lot of counties want to do them because then we know that the application is viable, it's valid, we can authorize service on a temporary county certificate. So there's different reasons why you would or wouldn't do an online application, but let's just say you're going to submit a paper application for a PIP. So it does require the application fee is $100 currently, check or money order. Also personal checks. The state does accept personal checks. A lot of people don't have checkbooks anymore, but some people do, and that's fine too. But just know that if a check does bounce, that's going to delay the application being processed, and there'll be additional fees that the commission will want to collect from that applicant. But we don't see too many of those, but it does happen from time to time. So then we have the before I open the link to the form, let's just finish going over the requirements. You've determined they've met basic skills, so you have completed the Form 41 BSR. If they've completed it by coursework or mixing, you want to make sure that 41 BSR is included in your application. Official transcripts verifying their degree and the subject matter competency units. Now, electronic transcripts, they cannot show the applicant as the receiver. The state will reject the application if they're shown to have been delivered to the applicant. So make sure when you're looking at the printed, electronic transcript that it shows either your agency. If it doesn't show your agency and they were received electronically, you'll need to include the email page from the university saying that, here are the transcripts for John Teacher. You want to make sure you include that email so the commission can see that your agency did receive those electronic transcripts, and then there won't be any rejects for that reason. The worksheet of units we're going to be going over at the end. The commission doesn't want to have to do all the work. They want to make sure that the LEA did the evaluating and so forth, that the person does qualify. You want to include on the PIP a copy of that board agenda or public notice if you're a COE. They no longer require the recruitment documents for a PIP. Used to be that they needed everything, the job announcement, the online ad, the university contacts. No more for the PIP. They do not need them. So the CL 857 says that you have to do a diligent search and do those things, but they do not want copies in the applications any longer. So that's a big, great thing because that was a lot of paperwork and we just don't need it anymore. You have to verify that they've been fingerprinted on Form 41 LS. You see, they have the completed live scan form, or they have a valid permit of another type on the CTC system or in the CTC system. Now, if you're a district that's going to want a temporary county certificate, you're going to ask your county for one. Your applicant needs a certificate of clearance first, or they already have something valid, like a valid sub permit, before you request of your county to issue a TCC. Because legally, the county offices, we cannot authorize service until they've gone through the professional fitness review, either through an initial certificate of clearance or have another valid permit of some type. Now, people are wondering about the fee credit. There is no fee credit for emergency STIPs and PIPs, so they have to pay the full $100 fee. The fee credit will apply to their first actual preliminary teaching credential that they get recommended for. So if they get a certificate of clearance, I think it's stated on there that they get a fee credit, but that does not apply to a PIP or STIP. So make sure your applicant knows that they will be required to pay the full application fee, because these are not full credentials. So that's just some little FYI on that. If anybody's wondering why they don't get the fee credit, that is the commission's deemed that's not appropriate for these types of permits. So now I'm going to open this CL 857 because I want to go over it. I think it's important that that you see it. Hang on, I'm going to fix my new screen share. All right, so here's the new screen share of this form, CL 857. This is where the employer verifies everything has to be filled out. Applicant's name, full social, name of the employing agency, your CDS code. If you do not know your CDS code, you can find it in the CDS school directory search. You can even Google CDS school directory, it will come up, and then you can cut and paste your actual district code, agency code. It's important because these are restricted documents and they need to know who is requesting it. So you indicate what it is you want, multiple, single, specify the subject. Again, do not just say science. It has to say what type of science or foundational level science. Special ed, you have to state the new specialization area. MMSN, ESN, one of the current disability areas on the current that's currently available. So that's there. The form also says that it says they required provide photocopies. This form hasn't been updated. As with many CTC forms, this one hasn't been updated since 2017. So yes, we do see that it says that, but the commission's already clarified to us many ways that they don't want to see the copies. So just check that you've done these things. Optional is optional. You can check or not check. The permit holder has to, the agency is saying on this form, yes, the permit holder will be provided in orientation and guidance. We've done our public notice, and we're a school district, you can check that. And then again, this reiterates what it has to say on that public agenda. And if you're a COE, you can do, or a non-public school, you can include a copy of the 72-hour notice that's dated. It has to, and again, that says what the notice has to say. I get emails and phone calls. What does this have to say? Well, it's on the form. The form will tell you exactly what needs to be stated in the agenda or your 72-hour notice. So the forms are great in that they really are clear on what the employing agency needs to say on them to satisfy the commission. All right, and then you're verifying these other things. They'll be, provided assistance in their professional plan, and they'll be, given assistance on enrolling in a program. And then they've been, you've gone over the requirements, and the applicant knows that they have to move forward. That's the whole idea behind these non-renewable documents, is the commission wants the progression to move forward into a program. Now, if it's special ed, they actually have to sign this form, the applicant. And I didn't realize it until I was putting this together that I was having all of the applicants sign it, but it's actually, if it's for special ed, I mean, having every applicant sign it is not a bad thing, but it's very mandatory for if it's a special ed request. And then your agency has to sign title and date. Now, signature, if it's a paper app, make sure, you know, you're either doing an ink signature or one of the newly acceptable PDFs. There was just a coded that came out on that. They've expanded the types of PDFs that they'll accept for electronic signature. You know, it can be a PDF, Adobe Acrobat, or whatnot. But be sure you're referring to the new coded correspondence on what types of e-signatures are now acceptable. So that's the form. I just wanted to go over it because we see a lot of these and want to make sure everybody understands how they are to be completed. Leave that, go back. All right, so now we're back on the presentation. So we've gone over all the requirements, we've gone over the form on how to put this paper application together. Now, for many county offices, we prefer to, you know, mail these to the commission. I don't know, there's a lot of people in this presentation today. However, whatever the process is for your agency and your county, follow that process for submitting these applications. Okay, so now we're on to the short-term staff permit. So this is for someone who maybe they've met subject matter competency by CSET or degree. So now we move on to this option. Same areas are available. Special ed, multiple, single subject, all the same. It's restricted, just like the provisional internship is restricted for a staffing need. Anticipated or unanticipated, and for that reason it's not required that they be declared on a declaration of need. You'll never see that on a DON that they have to declare PIPs and STIPs because you just don't know when you're going to need them. So at least that's one good thing. We don't have to declare that on the annual declaration of need. They can have passed all CSETs. It's once, you know, no extension. So you've already checked on the CTC website. If you don't see that they ever had a STIP and they qualify for one, you can go for it. Okay. Or let's say they have a general ed credential and now they're going to go to special ed. We see that. If you look on the CTC on the applicant's record and you do not see the STIP, but you see a multiple subjects, maybe or single subjects credential, and now you're going to sign them special ed, they qualify. And these ones I really like because there's no evaluating needed. All you have to do is submit the application, the fee, and the CL 859. There's no anything else because the commission already knows that by, you know, the fact that they were issued a credential, that they qualify. They have subject matter competency and basic skills, done. They can get the short-term staff permit for special ed. So that's a unique case because usually, you know, we say you don't go backwards. Well, because it's a different program, general ed and special ed are two different programs, you can kind of go backwards because they're going into a different direction for their teaching, you know, their teaching field. Now they want to go to special ed, so they will be required to do a special ed program, but in the interim, they can have coverage on a short-term staff permit. And like the PIPs, they are issued with an EL authorization on them, so that's a great thing. And they do expire at the end of the school year. You have to indicate what the end of the school year is on the CL 859. And we'll be going over that in just a minute, okay? Or you can have it expire on no later than September 1st, and then you have to check the box that it's to include a summer school assignment. But that's the most you're going to get out of a STIP is 9-1. That's it. They're not valid for a calendar year. No matter when you applied for it, you only get it for the school year, and then that's done because the state considers that if they've met subject matter competency, they're going to get into their internship before the next school year starts. At least that's the hope. Okay, so the overall requirements for a STIP, similar, very much the same as for a PIP. except the subject matter competency cannot be met. They can have met that, but again, requirements, degree, units, or they've passed all their CSETs, they can get us the STIP. Basic skills the same, grade of C or better, pass or credit, liberal studies is okay for the STIP for multiple subjects. That is okay. Now, liberal arts is still pending approval. So if your degree says bachelor's degree in liberal arts, it's not okay yet. It's, you go back to the PIP, because the STIP, they're trying to change it, and they probably will. But as you know, I even emailed the commission, they said not yet. So you're looking for the words liberal studies on a transcript. All right, so for single subject STIP, like the PIP, you know, the BA or higher, or that they can have a degree in the area. And if they do, then great, no evaluation. Those ones we love. It's really easy. If they have an English degree and they're going to put them in an English assignment, then great. You don't have to do a worksheet. The only worksheet you'll do is for 41 BSR if they need to have met it, if they've met it by coursework, you would do that one. So yeah, same things for science, same unit requirement as we went over for the PIP. What am I doing for time? Oh, okay, I'm almost there. So then again, we're just reiterating degree major are yeah, liberal studies is okay, pending regulations to include liberal arts. And now I'm just repeating, so I'm going to keep going on that. So special ed, just like the PIP, they qualify for multiple or single, they're going to qualify for the special ed or have one of these other options. Your form, the STIP employer requirements, local recruitment efforts, even though you do have to say that you did recruit, you don't have to provide the documents like the PIP now, they're the same in that regard. There's no agenda copy, it's just the application transcripts and form. And so let's look at the form CL 859. Let's look at that before we move on to the worksheets.
Give it a try again, Stephanie.
Yeah.
There you
All right. All right, I think it's up now. CL 859.
Yes,
This
okay.
is the form that we do with the short-term staff permit. It's the verifications. Again, at the top, looks very similar to the one for the PIP. Specify the area. The thing that most errors that I see are the ending date. Districts will put the wrong year. So make sure, I mean, the end of the school year, if you're requesting something in 23, it's probably going to expire in 2024. So make sure your ending year date is okay. You didn't request the same year you're in. And if it has a date of the date that you put here is after July 1st, you must check this box. Done a few and they get rejected because they put, yeah, end of our school is July 15th, and then they didn't check the box, commission rejects it. So make sure if you have any date that's after July 1st, the box is checked. You do have to state a justification on here. And then like the PIP, it requires the correct signature on it. So that's just briefly going into the form. I want to go back to the presentation real quick. Okay, so the application similar to the PIP, everything goes together. Your basic skills, your subject matter, your worksheets, everything is there to be processed as a paper app or, you know, check with your COE on online apps. I did put the slide in here because it's very important. As we start opening the worksheets, they have not been updated. Okay, they all say you can qualify for a PIP if you have subject matter in the area that ended. Okay, so we won't go over the at a glance chart again, but we all know now because legislation changed that they can't get a PIP if they've met subject matter competency. So I'm flying through this because I know that we have to hand it over to Candy, but let me just pull up one. The special ed was updated because of the disability area change. We'll put it up. No, that's not it. Yeah, okay. So this is the PIP for special ed. They did update this one. You can see it's 722 because they now list the current specialization areas, which is great. We know what we're requesting. But it says on here, must have a degree in liberal studies, no more. I mean, if they have that degree, they don't qualify for a PIP. So be mindful of that. Go to the STIP. And then when you're plugging coursework in here, because now you're looking for, you know, the 10 units in 4 areas, you can't mix and match. You can't double dip is what I want to say. You can't put a course over here, literature, and a course over here, same course. They have to be separate. So no double dipping. You cannot put teacher ed courses on this transcript. This worksheet. This is for subject matter competency units. Teacher ed units do not belong on the worksheet. They won't, CTC will reject. They'll say, oh no, we don't take some, teacher ed units on the worksheet. The only teacher ed units that they'll accept is if you're qualifying for the special ed under the general ed special ed unit combo. Then okay, but for subject matter competency, no. Okay, so it's all these variety of areas that you can use. You either love to do these or you hate to do them. I've grown to really like to do them. It's a challenge, I print out all the transcripts and I use a pencil, and there's, just take your time with it, because it does take some, it's a little challenging to finagle the units, but that's where we are. Is I just wanted to make sure you were aware that even though the worksheets say that subject matter competency, is an option for the PIP, it is no longer. So I won't belabor that point and keep going on and on about the worksheets. But I wanted to make sure you have the links, because we can check periodically to see if they've been updated. I am asking the commission, when do you plan to update these worksheets? Because none of them, some of them haven't been updated since 2015. So know that, legislation and things change all the time. And so what we're dealing with now is, if they have a degree in an area, you can't do a PIP, but you can do a STIP. And that's kind of where we are. There was a lot of flexibility that happened during COVID. People were getting PIPs and STIPs without basic skills. It was wild. If you were here 3 years ago, it was wild. The state was putting RC as a code on these documents, and some they were not. They were just issuing them without basic skills, and then later come to find out, oh, we don't have basic skills on file. So those were wild times, but the flexibilities have backed off, and they don't, now you need to show evidence when you're submitting an application for a PIP or STIP. That's, they allowed, they exhausted a PIP, exhausted a STIP, they let them do a waiver. Those are gone. There's no more drop-down waivers. I don't want to give away Candy's presentation, but I'm just saying the flexibilities that we knew from 3 years ago and have been used to are gone. Okay, there's no more of that. Commission wants a progression. These people need to move on into their internship program and get a credential. They don't want them going backwards anymore into a deep, dark hole. They want them to keep moving forward, get their credential and move on. So there's no appeals for extension. These are one and done. So that's my presentation on PIPs and STIPs. Hopefully, I've helped a lot of you, and you may have questions, and put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them at the end. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my partner here, Candy, and she's going to talk about waivers.
So we are going to take a short break until 10 o'clock, and then Candy will go ahead and get started at 10 o'clock. So please continue to type your questions in the Q&A. Please check the chat for links to the presentation, for links to the Q&A at 2 o'clock. Everything has been dropped in the chat, so please remember to check the chat. Thank you.
And then Amy, do I need to share the presentation So have
I thought
control.
Stephanie was gonna continue with it, but it's
Okay.
up to you if you guys want to switch, so,
No, I can continue.
okay, sounds good. Yes, go ahead. Thank you, Candy.
So welcome back. So I'm gonna get started with the variable term waivers. So again, the variable term waivers, I did want to just address, it doesn't mean you don't need to have anything. Like you still need to meet some qualifications. And again, the pro to having a variable term waiver is it does, if someone's just lacking either basic skills or maybe some units to qualify for the provisional intern permit for multiple subject, or maybe they don't really have all the special ed requirement, you can get them that first step of waiver to get them into their assignment. The limitation and the con is these really are people who don't meet the base requirements that, I mean, even the minimum qualifications that the commission has set as far as for a provisional internship or short-term staff permit. They don't really have the full requirements. I mean, these may be individuals who haven't really looked into the teaching field, so they are not even prepared as far as what steps they have to meet in the future. Again, what's important with these individuals is to really have that initial conversation with them and like let them know the base requirements they need to meet for that waiver. Some people will just like, okay, I want to be an intern. Well, there's a lot of steps they need to meet before becoming that intern. So really having that conversation with them so they understand like, okay, your goal this year is to meet basic skills. Or your goal this year, again, it's not really a full year always, because waivers will end at the end of like 6/30/7/1. So they need to understand if you put them on this waiver in February, they don't always have kind of that full year. So having them understand that piece. So again, the waiver, everything with the commission is $100. With this, I did want to premise if someone has a credential, they don't pay this $100 fee. So if someone has a preliminary, and this really is in effect, if someone is coming in from out of country, out of state, they have a preliminary credential and you're getting them maybe for a waiver for like an EL authorization because they don't meet a requirement. So just remember, if someone does have a credential, that $100 fee is waived. If you're getting them a waiver for basic skills, if it's for like, for example, if you're getting them a waiver for math and they've attempted basic skills, they need to have passed the math section. If you're getting them a waiver for English and they've taken the basic skills, they need to have met the English section. If they haven't attempted it, it's fine. But remember, if they haven't, and these are things where you truly have to have a conversation with someone, because you may not know they already attempted it. Like I've asked multiple people like, oh, have you attempted basic skills? They're like, no. And then I found out later they had taken it and they didn't pass a section that I wasn't aware of. So it's really important to have those conversations when you're putting someone on a waiver. And they need to have a BA degree. You cannot waive a BA degree. So that is one thing you cannot waive is the bachelor's. You have to have the board agenda item in there, similar to like the STIPs and the PIPs. And then the recruitment information in there showing that you tried to find a qualified person. And then for the waivers is the only document that requires the certificate of clearance to be issued. So again, where it gets confusing is that for a county office to sign off on a temporary county certificate, we need them to have a certificate of clearance. That is not a commission requirement, that's a county office requirement. And when it comes to actually granting a waiver, the commission requires that they have a certificate of clearance granted, and you cannot date the waiver prior to that date. So it's important to make sure that you pull that certificate of clearance off so you can see the date to make sure that you're dating the certificate of the waiver after that date. And again, temporary county certificates, check with your county office. Some county offices will not sign a temporary county certificate on a waiver because again, it's up to the sole discretion of the commission whether it gets granted. So this is the waiver. So the commission did a few years ago, they created waiver checklists and just the ability to look at, okay, what is required for a waiver? Because it is a little bit different. But as I've said, you still need to have subject matter. So what it is, instead of the 18 units, they're required the 12. So when you're evaluating for these documents, make sure that you still need to know that they do have some, they need to have some units. And the science is a little bit different and the math, because they do have to have more specific. I know for the math, in most cases, you don't want to be looking at the stat classes. You want to be making sure that they have those actual math units. And then for the science areas, they need to have 12 across, for general foundational, across all subject areas. And then for the multiple subjects, same thing, very similar. As far as instead of looking for the 10 units, you're looking for 8, and you can still combine. And then for special education, there's more options for special education. Because again, you're looking at the classroom experience, you're looking at whether they've done work within a special education credential program, and then the units they may have within their BA degree. And for special education, it's probably a little bit more rare because they can have a degree in any of the statutory subjects. So again, if someone has an English degree, they're going to qualify. If someone has a math, they're going to qualify for, again, at this point, more of the STIP than the PIP because technically they have subject matter. And this is this is kind of a 2-page. So the first page, second page, to look at, again, the rounding of every way they can qualify. And again, it is a little simpler to qualify for special ed just because there's so many options they can have. So emergency permits, and this is kind of just a global to look at. The end result is a clear credential. Like that's where we're hoping that people stay in the field. When we're hiring people at the beginning. So a waiver would be kind of that first step in, they would move to that provisional intern or short-term staff permit or both. I mean, someone can start on the provisional intern permit. If they don't meet maybe their unit requirement to become an intern, or they don't have, or they meet something and they're just not quite there, you can put them on that short-term staff permit. Usually what I'll tell my districts is always try, when you're evaluating someone, if they would qualify for a PIP or a STIP, always go PIP first. That way you still have that short-term staff permit available if you need to use it because they don't meet, if they're lacking something for their intern program. Again, the main goal, get them to that intern program. Once they're in the intern program, usually we're in a pretty good shape. They're going to be an intern for 2 years. When they're done with that, they're going to roll into their preliminary program. And then they'll move on to their induction program and then have their clear credential. So, I mean, that's always the route for someone who has like no experience, lacking, to start with that waiver and the PIP, the STIP, intern, preliminary to the clear. Again, sometimes these are a little bit jumbled. I have had where people go intern, they may not have passed their TPA for some reason, and they never use their STIP, so they go back to the STIP. I mean, they're somewhat interchangeable, but for the most part, this is the main path. So in looking at the applications, whenever you're completing them, make sure that their legal name is used. We've been having a lot of people either changing their name or just deciding to change their name. And so let them know when they're filling out these applications that if they're putting a different name on their 41-4 application, they need to do a name change form first. So they have to do the 41NC. They need to have the supporting documentations, whether it's because of a divorce or a marriage. That should be done because the commission will kick it back if they get an application that does not match their profile. So what I'll usually do is say, hey, can you just double check your profile to see? And a lot of times people will just like, maybe they, on their initial one, they hyphenated and they forgot they did that. And now they're not hyphenating. Just have them like double check, because some people are like, I didn't change my name. I'm like, well, you did something, because it's being kicked back. And then we're looking like, oh, well, yeah, that I did that. And this could be like someone with a clear credential. Like that, it's been 5 years, they don't remember what they did. So I'll usually just tell people, do a quick like look at your profile, especially if they haven't been in their profile. Because sometimes it's just people going in to renew, but now they're applying for something where they need a paper application. And they've just been renewing online for years, and they just forget what their name, original name is on their profile. And then if they do in fact want to change it, I'll say, okay, you'll have to do the 41NC to get it changed before, to make sure that all of this matches up. Again, helpful resources. The SIG guide is where you really want to look in. They're going to have all of the updated employer forms. So the SIG guide, and again, we have the username and password here, because sometimes people will get out of it and delete it and not remember how to get back in. But again, all of the tools, whether it's the unit calculator, updated leaflet, the code of correspondence, and that, all of that information you're going to find in the SIG guide. So it's just really important to make sure to be in the SIG guide as much as possible versus the public CTC guide. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the limited assignment permits. So the purpose of the general ed limited assignment permit is for someone who has a credential, but they want to teach outside of their credential area. And this could be, the main purpose really is maybe someone doesn't qualify for a local assignment option. So they have a credential, they qualify, they meet the requirements to get a local assignment option, but maybe they don't have the subject, the units. Or it could really be a school board doesn't want to put people on local assignment options. I mean, we now know with CalSAS and the SARC, having teachers teach outside of their credential area isn't as desirable as it may have been in the past. So we have the general limited assignment permits, which are authorizations that are on their document. So we have a multiple subject. So if someone has a single subject, any area, and they now want to work in a self-contained classroom, they can get a general limited assignment permit. There are no requirements as far as unit requirements. So they can just kind of move to that document. The purpose, these are not lifelong documents. So these are documents that are bridging them to meet either units to be on a local assignment option, or they're getting their final stuff done to get it put on their credential. So, I mean, this could be a situation where someone's passed the CSAT multiple subject, but they still have to do a methodology or pedagogy class. So that's the reasoning for the limited assignments. Again, it's not something they're going to have for an extended amount of time. It's just something that's going to bridge them until they meet the next requirement for either a local assignment option or to have something added on to their credential or to get a new credential. So basically, to be currently, in order to get a general limited assignment, you have to be employed. So this isn't something that someone on their own can go and get. Districts, when you fill in county offices, when we're doing the declaration of need, this is one of the areas we're filling in for the declaration of need. So we need to make sure, like when you're forecasting your declaration of need, think of like, okay, are we going to have anybody potentially teaching outside of their credential area that we want to put on a general ed limited assignment? They have to hold a credential. So for the general ed limited assignment, it's either you're going multiple subject to multiple subject. There's a separate document for the special education. So for the GLAPs, it's general education. And so again, and they have to be assigned a experienced educator because this individual is teaching in an area that they're not familiar with. So that's where, and it could also be a situation where maybe someone was covered on a local assignment option for years. And now a district is saying like, okay, we now want you to have this document. So we're going to put you on a general limited assignment. It's going to be good for 1 year and we want to see progress. So the renewal requirements for the general limited assignment is they have to still be employed, continuing with that school district. And the district has to have the declaration of need on file. And they have to either satisfy that they've completed 6 units towards the coursework of the area that's listed on the general limited assignment, or that they've taken the subject matter exam and they've passed at least 2 sections. So again, that's the progress. And that's where some districts will be like, oh, we actually want you to see progress versus just continually having you on a local assignment option. So as far as additional requirements, they have to consent to be on a limited assignment. So the individual needs to be aware that they have renewal requirements. It has to be submitted through the employing school district because again, the same thing, the school district has to agree to put them on and the local assignment, or put them on the limited assignment and provide them a support provider. And that's kind of the biggest thing, is making sure that the individual has support. And if they're using the subject matter option to meet a renewal requirement, they have to take all of the subtests. So, I mean, obviously all the exams have different subtests, but they have to at least attempt them all so they can show progress. So that's what the general ed limited assignment, and then moving on to the special education limited assignment. So this would be someone who may have mild moderate, and again, now moving to the newer authorizations, because we now have the mild moderate support needs, the extensive support needs. These are individuals that are switching from kind of mild to moderate to a moderate severe or extensive. So that's the main purpose of the CLAP. And again, it's authorizing instruction in any of the specialty areas. So again, when you're looking at the general ed limited assignment and the special ed limited assignment, the authorization is the authorization that the traditional credential is going to have. So because the special ed authorizes in all of these areas, then the individual has the CLAP authorizes the same thing. So the areas, so we have the new areas, which are the mild moderate support needs, the extensive support needs. The mild to moderate authorizes the holder to conduct, and again, it's still grade, the same authorization. So grades 1 through 12, including 22, doesn't include the early childhood, and emotional disturbance, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities. The extensive support needs is going to be more the health impairment, specific learning disabilities, traumatic brain injuries, and again, kindergarten, including transitional kindergarten, grades 1 through 12 and age 22. Again, the early childhood isn't, because this is specific mild, moderate support needs, extensive support needs. We have the deaf and hard of hearing, the visual impairment, and then the early childhood, again, is the birth to pre-K, which covers all disability areas, and then the language and academic development. So for the special education initial requirements, they have to be, again, you have to be employed, you have to have the declaration of need, And you have to have a valid credential. So this isn't someone who's on an intern. And these are people who have a full credential and are looking to teach outside of that credential area. Again, the reminders for limited assignments, you must have a declaration of need on file. The individual is not required to have units up front in order to get the CLAP. Multiple subject authorizations can be requested. Renewal requirements must be completed after the issuance. So in this situation, I've had people say, oh, I have these units I took like in the summer, but the issuance date was like August 1st. But again, the units have to be after August 1st. So make sure to let people know it's during the duration of the document. So if you have someone who knows they're going to get this document, have that conversation like, hey, because sometimes they'll kind of jump the gun like, okay, I'm going to take this class in the summer. Well, you may have dated it for the next school year, so you didn't date it until like August or September 1st because you want it to run through that whole year. So just make sure to let them know, like, don't enroll in courses, or if you're going to enroll in courses, let me know so I know to like what date to use. Like, okay, I'll use a date of August 1st instead of September 1st. Just to make sure that they know what units they need to take and when. Because you don't want them taking like, oh yeah, okay, I took these 3 units in the kind of that late summer session. And then I'm just going to do these 3 units like in the spring. They're going to be missing units to get to that 6-unit mark. Okay, so and again, I just want to go back real quick because I know I'm kind of going like kind of fast through these. Just to recap, the limited assignments really are for people with credentials who are teaching outside. So it could be like, okay, I want to put you on a local assignment option, but you're missing like a couple classes, so you're going to use this option. Or someone who may really want to put something on their credential and they want to start teaching it, like, okay, my goal is to add multiple subject. This is what I've done, but I want to start teaching the class now. Limited assignment is an option. So again, it's just an option for them. And as a district, you're the one deciding this. A county office isn't going to tell you like you have to put them on a limited assignment if you want to put them on a local assignment option. This is a local level decision. But it's also something you need to have a conversation with the teacher, because there are renewal requirements they have to do in order to either renew it. And again, once it expires, it's gone. It's a 1-year document. So individuals need to know, like, okay, you were teaching English on a limited assignment for this year, and we can't renew it unless you can show evidence of meeting the renewal requirements. Okay. So I wanted to go into the next thing of extensions and appeals. So for the extensions, there's various reasons an individual needs an extension. And during COVID, I think we probably saw quite a few of these extensions and appeals. But the one thing when it comes to extensions, and again, it's extensions of time. But the other piece of it, this is between them and the commission. So as someone who's processing these applications, there's things that you can look for to help the case that this is going to get granted. But at the end of the day, this is specifically up to the commission whether they're going to grant these. The main thing is an individual needs to show good cause. The bottom line is they didn't meet something. They let their credential expire, or it's going to be expiring. So the first thing is it has to be what the commission considers an extenuating circumstance. So that's the first thing. It's like, why did this individual let their credential expire? It can, and again, it doesn't have to be like when they're asking for an extension, it doesn't have to be like, okay, my credential expired a month ago. It could have expired 2 years ago. There isn't really a time limit. The one thing I always tell people is, depending on where you are, as far as like with your credential, if you let a preliminary credential expire, now all of a sudden there's a lot of new regulations, you may be held accountable to that. But at the end of the day, everybody is entitled to an extension. And again, it's case by case. And the one thing that is not going to be accepted is a financial hardship. That is the one thing which could usually be a reason someone's letting it, like they didn't have tuition money or whatever reason. But when you're reading and reviewing someone's letter that they have to include for an extension of time, make sure that there's nothing financial in there. Like it could have a lot of stuff, and then there could be one line of, oh, and my husband lost their job, or I lost, or, I was on a medical appeal, so I wasn't working and wasn't able to earn. So just make sure that there's nothing financial listed in their letter. So what I want to start with first is more of the preliminary induction appeals. So these are a little bit different because there's a 3-year extension and a 2-year extension. Everybody who had a preliminary credential is entitled to do an induction. And again, there are 3-year extension, 2-year extension. A lot of times I'll refer to them as an induction extension because this is very specific to induction. So this is somebody who had a preliminary credential and for whatever reason, they never enrolled in induction. Or they got their preliminary credential and stopped working, took some time off, moved out of the state, and now they're back. So the purpose of the 3-year extension is primarily for someone who doesn't have a job yet. So this could be an individual who moved out of state, they're now back, and they want to start teaching, but they haven't gotten a job yet, but they don't want to start looking for a job until they have their credential valid again. So this would be the 3-year extension. And the purpose is it's basically giving someone 1 year to find a job. And then once they find a job, they have 2 years to complete induction. So that's kind of it. So the 3-year extension doesn't require you to have a current position at the time. The 2-year extension is really, these are people who have employment. So part of the requirement of the form that they're going to sign of the 2-year extension is that the induction program that they're going to be enrolling in has to sign off saying, yes, they're enrolled. So the main thing is induction programs kind of stop enrollment throughout the year. So you need to make sure that if this person was, like, for example, if this person was hired in November, chances are they're not going to be able to get into the induction program. So you would be getting them a 3-year because they're not going to be able to get into induction until the following year. And then, so once the induction, so again, those are specific to people and had induction as a requirement. That's the other piece of it, is when you're looking at someone's renewal requirements, if they're like, oh yeah, I had a preliminary credential, I'm going to do an induction extension. If induction wasn't listed as a renewal requirement, they cannot do an induction extension because that isn't a renewal requirement. So that could be someone coming in from out of state who had the years of experience. So all that they needed to do was maybe subject matter, get their EL authorization. They cannot get a 2 or 3-year extension because induction was not a renewal requirement. So for those people who don't have like that induction requirement or a different type of credential, you would have a 1-year extension. So, and again, we look at these as more of an appeal. So it's an appeal reasoning. So there's various appeal reasons. So I'm going to go through them. And these are the appeal codes, or the codes you would put at the corner of the application. So it's important to make sure that you're using the correct coding on the application with what appeal reason. Because again, it's going with the appeal reason. So starting with the RGA-4, it's a new requirement that was added in statute. So, and this isn't often, but it could be that maybe someone was in a credential program and they were kind of getting through it. And then all of a sudden they decided that, oh, we're going to add like English language, like a different type of English language learner requirement, or Maybe like a TPA was added up, a different type, and it was added at the end of this individual's credential program. So they basically need this requirement, which means, and they don't have time because now their intern's expiring, or their preliminary is expiring, and somehow a new requirement was added on. So that would be the RGA 4. I think the most commonly used is the RGA 7, which is the medical appeal. The important thing with this is make sure that this was during the time of their credential. Like I've had people oh, I had medical reasoning, but it wasn't during the time of the credential issuance dates. So the medical appeal, it has to be during the extent of the credential. They have to include a letter of explanation. It's important if they have information from their doctor, if they could get doctor's notes. And again, because this might not be specifically for them, it might be they took time off for a family member, household member. So it's important for them to include that information. So the commission can see that, okay, yes, they didn't have a medical issue, but it was required that they couldn't complete the renewal requirements because they were taking care of a family member, and have that note from the doctor that said that they really needed that support. So then there's the RGA 10, which is again for the emergency and the limited assignment permits, and it's that they did not complete the renewal requirements. So and again, this is where they need a letter. So it could be that a course got canceled, that they were enrolled in a course and due to whatever reasoning, it got canceled. So the important thing is backup documentation. So yes, it's important for them, they have to write a letter. For all of these 1-year extensions, the individual has to write a letter. So no matter what, the letter has to be in there. And then as far as for us, when we're reviewing that letter, if they're saying, my course was canceled, make sure that they have a letter either from the college, something showing that yes, that course was canceled, and there wasn't another course available is usually what I'll ask for. So again, that's for the kind of that emergency, because really the only or the CSET was canceled, which right now that's really not likely, but during COVID that happened quite a bit. So when we were using the RGA 10, that was usually kind of during that time frame, because a lot of exams got canceled, and then they had that letter email stating that yes, it was canceled and they had to reschedule. So for that, just make sure you have that backup documentation, not just their letter. And then same thing for the so the RGA 10 is specific to emergency and limited assignments. The RGA 20 is could be more global, like maybe for someone with a preliminary who didn't have induction as a renewal reason, so they can't use the 2 or 3 year extension, but they didn't meet their renewal requirements. So this could be an individual who needed to take either coursework or something for basic skills, because they hadn't met their basic skills yet, even though they're required to do it in the first year. Sometimes that gets missed. So this could more likely be for the CSET exam for subject matter. So again, they registered for CSET and they failed to pass it, and they didn't meet the renewal requirements. So again, RGA 20, but what the issue with these is it's really not up to us. We can look at the letter and it could look great. We could look at the documentation and be like, yeah, it looks good. But at the end of the day, it's up to the commission whether they grant it or not. So that's kind of the main piece of this to understand, is it's not 100% yeah, they're going to get this 1-year extension. And that's the thing that you need to really let the individual know is, you didn't meet your requirements. You have the right to get a 1-year extension, to apply for 1 year, but it's up to the commission whether it's granted or not. For these, let them know that if this gets denied, then they're out of the classroom. And it's important to let, like, if I'm ever using this for one of my teachers, I let the principal know, like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, but we need to be prepared. If the commission says no, then I have to remove them. So, and that's a conversation you need to have with the teacher, is just so you know. So the true conversation is, don't wait for this to be issued to start working on this renewal requirement. If this was a situation where you didn't pass your CSET examination, you should be enrolled in every single offering to make sure that if this does get rejected, in the meantime, you've passed your CSET and we can now apply for your renewal. So again, I give people kind of that, like, yes, we're going to do this, but this isn't a given, and you need to work towards meeting the requirements in case it gets, basically, because either way, it's only good for 1 year. So they really need to meet the renewal requirements anyways, so they shouldn't be waiting to do it. So quickly, just going over what is acceptable. So if an applicant is unable to meet the requirements because of a health issue or of them or the family member, and again, they need to have backup information for that, whether it's a doctor's note, something showing that they were required to help this individual, or they were unable to meet the requirement based on the health issue. Now, again, remember, especially if you're looking at like a preliminary credential, that's 5 years. So to be like, okay, so all 5 years you weren't able to do this because you had surgery in year 3 or you had surgery in year 5. So again, that's what you're really looking at. Is like, look at the document they're trying to get an extension for, and then really look at like, okay, is this basically acceptable as far as the timing? When it comes to the 2-year and 3-year extensions, what you're kind of looking at is, are they employed? So when you're looking at it, is like, don't get someone like a 2-year extension if you know that they're not employed. And that's more for kind of the 2 and 3 years when it comes to induction. When it comes to the acceptable reasoning for non-induction, as far as did they not meet the unit requirements, it's really, you're dealing with the college university and they need to get that verification from the college university. There's really nothing we can get from the college university. It has to kind of be them, because they're the individual that's trying to gather that information. You can help them and you can like maybe send an email, but for the most part, it's their responsibility to provide you that information. And again, and a lot of this is just common sense. Like, did they enroll in the coursework? Did they attempt the coursework? The one thing I will say, if you know you put someone, like if you have teachers who you know their credentials are about to expire, this is where kind of we do kind of our due diligence of like checking in with them 6 months before it's going to expire. Like, hey, where are you at? And then at that point, if they say like, oh, you know, I enrolled in a course, but it got canceled, you can like follow up with well, you may want to check, here's other colleges in our area that you can check with. You don't want to like leave it till the end and be all of a sudden be trying to scramble of like, oh, the credential expired, now I need to do this extension. And they may not really have a good reason. It's just that like, oh, well, I enrolled at one college and that one college canceled their course. So again, this is how you can help them to make sure that you're following up with them. Because again, some of these reasonings, it's like, yes, there's reasons, but they don't always fit into it. So, and again, this is just, and again, I don't want to have to like go all through all of these. I think most of us who have done these know kind of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, but I did want to kind of just lay them out, just so you kind of like know kind of what is acceptable. But usually when we're reading the letters, it does kind of make sense, like, okay, yes, that's acceptable, and no, this is not. And then, and again, like one of these, like the applicant hasn't been employed in the school system since the credential was issued. So, and again, it's just, a lot of people are like, well, how could that, again, they may have gotten the credential and then moved out of state. So, I mean, that's like, some of these aren't like, maybe we have a lot of these situations, but we do have some of them where people are moving back to California and maybe let their credential lapse. And some of them may not have had induction as a reason. So they're falling into this kind of 1 year extension versus the 2 or the 3 year extension. So I just wanted to kind of put together what an individual would include with their letter. So for the RGA-4, that would be something more for that their program has to verify the completion requirements. Like, what requirements do they still have to do? For the RGA-7, which is the medical appeal, they need a physician statement, doctor's notes. For the RGA-10, verification of enrollment in a program. So they need to show that they are in fact enrolled in a program. Again, photocopies of passing and failing exam scores for the RGA-10 and RGA-20. The CL-469 has to be completed. So for the RGA-10, they still need to include the CL-469 because the employing school district or county office or charter school, they have to sign that. So they still have to show that they were provided the assistance, a professional, someone who was assigned to them. So we have to sign it. It's going to be left blank for where the college university would sign. I know a lot of times these get left out because they didn't complete 6 units. So sometimes the districts just don't put it in, but remember, you still have to sign your portion of it. Where it gets difficult at times is maybe you hired someone from another district. So they didn't technically work for you the year before, they worked somewhere else. Where they worked that last year is who needs to sign the CL-469. So it's not where they're going, it's where they're coming from. So just remember with the CL-469, it still does need to be included, even if the college university isn't going to sign it. And then again, letters from the program detailing remaining requirements. So again, for the RGA-20, official transcripts showing like what they did and what they have completed up to this point. And then verification of teaching experience. So the commission can see that they have been teaching. Then for the 2-year extension for induction, the induction program has to sign those forms. For the 3-year extension, an individual can submit these. They can submit them on their own. It's fine. Usually if I have someone call and ask, and also make sure you take copies of everything before you submit it, because once it's submitted, it's kind of a done deal. So in order for a county office to be able to sign off on a temporary county certificate, we need to see what got submitted. So I always tell people to take copies so they can provide it to their district. The 1-year extensions, again, are reviewed on a case-by-case basis. An individual not being able to pay for coursework or an exam is not a sufficient reason for an extension. So if it's that I couldn't afford the exam, or the coursework is just too expensive, they make sure that they have another reason, or they're not going to be able to get that 1-year extension. And then if an individual did not complete the required units, the program will not sign the CL-469, but the employer still has to sign it. And then a letter of explanation has to be included in LL. So you can have like really valid doctor's notes, like you can have all that information. The individual still needs to do the letter. So make sure they are aware that they just have to write a letter explaining why they were unable to meet the requirements. And then all of this information is just additional to support that letter that they've written. So usually have them write the letter. Once they write the letter, then you can let them know kind of what additional documents that they need to provide within that letter. And that was the end of my session. Thank you.
Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Stephanie. So we'll give you guys a couple more minutes to type in some questions, and then we will start answering a couple questions, and then we will continue with Q&A at 2 p.m. this afternoon. That link was dropped in the chat for the Q&A this afternoon. I will drop it in there again. So please join us at 2 o'clock, but we will start in just a couple minutes with the Q&A. So that way, go ahead and keep typing them in there, and we will make sure, hopefully we can get all the questions answered. Again, also in the chat is the presentation link.
Candy,
Yeah.
I went through some of the Q&As and I did answer quite a few.
Okay,
And I think Amy will probably publish those out, but the ones I left on the screen are ones that I wasn't quite sure of, or I felt like we needed to actually explain more than typing.
okay,
So that's why I left them. So there's like.
Yeah, we will still read them out loud during the 2 o'clock
Okay.
session for answering.
Good.
Yeah, so that way people who have the same question, we can definitely make sure we
Great.
get through all of them. So, but we'll start with the beginning, and and I know Nisa will also be joining us at the 2 o'clock session for Q&A. So we'll start with some general ones as people are typing them in. So let me just take a look at the chat here real quick. Okay, so the first question is, how do we know if they pass CSETs?
There is no way that we know or anyone knows. I mean, there's no crystal ball here. You'd have to email the commission and see if they have any on file, but you have to have the applicant provide scores. If they say, oh yeah, I passed those CSETs, you have to see what they're talking about, because there's no way that the analyst or anybody can, yeah, you just don't know.
right, and we don't have access to pull that information, but no, the commission knows. So, I mean, I think that's kind of restating what Stephanie was saying is, you really have to ask the individual, like, can you please provide me, if they say, oh, I've never passed them, say, oh, well, could you just provide me with your score report? Can you have it sent? So I can just verify that, like, if you passed or didn't pass. Because the commission will know, it's just, we don't have that information readily available to us.
All right, the next question is, if an employee has done 3 years as an intern, haven't been able to pass the CSETs, can they go backwards and apply for a STIP or a PIP?
Only if that internship's expired. I mean, if they have an expired internship and they've never had a PIP, it wouldn't be a PIP because they have subject matter competency if they got into that internship program. So it would be a STIP if they've never had one before.
Okay, next question is, how long does it usually take for their credential application to process?
I think depending on the year, I mean, I think we're usually at around 4 months-ish. Is typically, as far as a paper, well, even the online recommends for the PIPs and STIPs. That's about how long, if there's an actual evaluation required, it takes.
And you can always check the CTC's homepage. Every day they update it. I looked today and they're processing applications they received on February 6th. So do use the CTC's homepage as a guide to when you can anticipate your application getting processed.
I mean, and then just if it's a situation for an intern, like on a program recommendation, whether it's an intern or the preliminary to a clear, though, like the induction ones, those can usually be done fairly quickly. Like if you have somebody who's like, oh, I just like completed, those are usually within like 15 to 20 days.
Next question is, if they have not passed the CSETs, does that mean they cannot apply for a PIP?
Now, if they have not passed their CSETs, they can apply for a PIP as long as their degree is not in a statutory subject.
Okay, how does someone meet subject matter competence by degree? What degree of or coursework does that entail?
Well, the at a glance link that I shared, that's pretty clear on what degrees are. They have to be an exact match to a statutory subject or liberal studies for multiple subjects. So use the guide that's available to determine if your transcript is actually a degree equivalency area or not.
Next question is, does C- fall under C or better?
Yes.
Okay, what subject matter competency does liberal studies meet?
Multiple subjects or special ed.
Next question is a BA degree major in sociology consider meeting subject matter in social science?
Not
No,
at this time, no.
Okay, do you mean that if you have a bachelor's in English, you don't have to fill out a STIP evaluation worksheet? Please clarify.
that is correct. If you're requesting the same subject as what the degree's in, there's no evaluating necessary.
Next question's kind of long, and it says universities are claiming that students, ed specialists, are not meeting subject matter and are eligible for a PIP. In the presentation, it was stated that if they have a liberal arts degree, they don't even need to take a CSET. That is not the case for an ed specialist. They are still being required to meet subject matter in their programs to be intern eligible. In addition, the CTC is telling students that if they have used a STIP, they can now use a PIP for their ed specialist. This is going backwards, which have been told we can't do. The information is differing from the university CTC and this presentation. How can we push applicants through with such differing information?
I actually pulled up Program Sponsor Alert 21-10. That is from the commission. It actually says what degrees are appropriate for multiple subjects, single subjects, and special education. So, I mean, I'm assuming these programs should be using these guides. The PSA 2110 clearly states that multiple subjects, liberal studies meets for special education subject matter competency. So I'm not sure why they're.
Yeah, and I see that it says liberal arts in this question, where it's liberal
okay.
studies that's accepted, not liberal arts at this time.
Okay, that could be the kicker there. If that's right, it's not yet. It's not been approved yet, but so that could be the language.
Okay, let's see here. Are the old, mild to moderate credentials grandfathered in?
Well, I mean, the credentials, just like the severely handicapped and learning handicapped, those, and again, you have to refer to the chart. Because it's not a matter of that they're grandfathered in, they can teach what their credential authorizes. So that's where the chart, especially now that we have new authorizations, is critical. That they can continue teaching what they've always been allowed to teach. It's just the newer authorizations have a broader authorization. So you just have to, when you're placing teachers in classes, you need to know the disability areas. So you know, like if you have an option of like, okay, we have someone with the newer mild moderate support needs versus someone with either the LH or the mild mod, just they are all authorized to teach different areas of the disability sections.
And just remember that this is where the bridge document comes in. You know, if you have a program for bridge, you do that, or you can still request a CLAP if your mild moderate person needs to have, you know, broader authorizations. You can still get those CLAPs to cover them.
All right, next question. I have an applicant who has a BA in business who has applied for our PE teaching position. We have been unsuccessful in filling the position. Since he meets subject matter competency with his business degree, can we apply for the STIP for next year while he gets into an intern program to receive his credential in PE?
Well, I mean, he would need to meet the requirements for PE for the STIP, which would be 18 semester units. So as long as they have the 18 semester units, you can actually put them on a provisional intern permit because they don't have subject matter for physical education.
Or a waiver if they have 12 units.
Okay, we're going to answer one more question. Please remember after we answer this last question, to join us at 2 o'clock, and we will answer all the other questions. And we will continue for the last 5 minutes to allow you to type in more questions that we'll answer at 2 o'clock, but this will be the last question for this session, so we can give you time to finish typing in here. So last question for you ladies is, do charter schools need to provide a copy of the board agenda for PIP applications?
It's a public notice.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Candy. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And we'll leave the Q&A open for another 5 minutes to continue typing your questions in there, and we will see everyone at 2 o'clock. Thank you so much.